This is Action and Ambition, the show that takes you all over the world to share interviews with the most successful and relevant people on the planet. Hear their backstory, get the most important lessons they've learned on their road to success, and hear exclusive tips on how to implement their success in your own life. Action and Ambition is brought to you by Entrepreneur Magazine and your host, Andrew Metal.
Thank you for tuning in to the Action Ambition podcast. I am Philip Lanos, and today we're joined by Asha Terry. Now, she is an author, an award-winning community mental health advocate, a psychotherapist, and a certified life coach. Terry is the founder of Behavioral Health Consulting Services, LMSW PLLC, which provides consulting, counseling, and coaching to creatives and small business owners in the wellness and entertainment industries and educational sector. As a treating provider, Terry has over 20 years of experience providing evaluations, diagnoses, treatments, and life-enhancing skills to children, adults, families, and couples. A significant portion of Mrs. Terry's work has been conducted in marginalized communities with survivors of intergenerational trauma, and as with professionals in search of a fulfilling life. As a writer and speaker for several publications, which once included one of the nation's largest online medical news outlets in the Black community, blackdoctor.org, Terry has effectively demonstrated anecdotal evidence that therapy works and that mindfulness is a holistic way of healing oneself on a continuous basis. Her new book is called Adulting as a Millennial, a guide to everything your parents didn't teach you. Asha, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, like I said earlier before we got started, I'm always excited when I get a chance to speak to authors because I feel like it's a treacherous path, but you're not just an author. You have an entire background in mental health sciences. So let me ask you this before we even get started. Do you come from a family of mental health scientists or entrepreneurs or authors?
Great question. I've never been asked that before. No, I don't. I am one of maybe two people that I've known in my family that owns a business and decided to go the unconventional route after working for 14 years, I think it was, for other people. And I'm the first person in my family to also write a book.
Wow. Now that generation breaking records, right? That's what that is right there. And so did you like at some point after college, and instead of working for a firm, did you decide you were going to make one yourself, a practice, and sort of doing all that? Or was it sort of like you worked at a practice, you saw the way things were being run, you said, I need to do my own thing so I can focus on helping the type of people I want to help? Is that sort of the way that happened?
Yeah, it was more of the latter because I graduated from undergrad in 2000. And at that time, being in mental health, you went through the track of either doing children and family work or organizational work. So you'd work in communities doing small or macro level type work where you either worked with small organizations or you did community advocacy. There wasn't this idea that people who were social workers or psychologists would actually have a private practice, at least particularly not in social work, which was my track. And the goal was you get your graduate degree. So I had to go from undergrad right into graduate school and get a master's degree, get licensed, and then work for someone else. No one taught you that you could have a private practice or you could run a business. That was not even in any of the body of research literature that we ever did our work under in school. So after doing almost 15 years of community-based work, outpatient mental health, corporate work in terms of mental health within corporations that you did telephonic case management, I experienced burnout twice and almost gave up on the idea of going into private practice because along the path of me working, I did meet practitioners, no one of color, ironically, or not, maybe so ironic at that time. And the people that I was inspired by were people who were working full-time for someone else and they had a side private practice. But after I went back to school, postgraduate studies, got another certificate in psychoanalytic work, which is more Freudian based, then I was able to see other women, I was able to see other people of color who were invested in having a private practice. And that's when I was reinvigorated to develop something of my own. So it took, a decade and a half, but I got there, and I wasn't very clear in the beginning, honestly, about what kind of vision I had. I just knew I wanted to help people differently the way you help people working for a corporation. And then as I grew, studied, did other work, learned from my mentors, then I would say probably by the latter part of the 2010s, we went full force and created behavioral health consulting services. And now I'm over 7 years into owning my business, 5 years thriving, including in a pandemic. And all areas of my work, from consulting to coaching to counseling, has been thriving and expanding. And I'm really, excited about it.
I'm super stoked to hear that, especially to be thriving during the pandemic. That's something that shut down a lot of people, but it's when we need people with your strengths the most, is to be able to tap into that other side of ourselves and figure out, there was someone I was talking about who said before one can be coached, they first have to get the stuff out of the way, whatever it is, because you can't be coachable until you get that, because then the self-sabotage will always be there, right? Now, it's interesting. I actually always dreamed of going down the path that you went down in terms of being able to help people in that way, developing products and solutions on software. It's exciting and it's sexy and this and that, but there's a lot also that I personally, and I imagine you resonate with this, get from like seeing someone transform their lives. And I thought about the life coaching way too, which is, I know you offer that. And I've noticed that I've maybe come across one other person, so that's you and one other person, that are both psychotherapists and also life coaches. And I feel like that's the perfect blend of it, as opposed to just being a life coach. You don't really have that backing, that background. So I got to ask, did that happen on purpose, or did it just so happen that you were a therapist and you said, you know what, I could expand things by also stepping into life coaching?
No, see, I have a funny story with that. Really quickly, when I started hearing about life coaches, I was a little envious, to be honest, because I hadn't heard of this term until maybe around 2012, 2013. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, these people are going to steal our jobs in mental health. And I don't know what that assumption was about, but I started to see graduate schools like mine, Fordham University, and others offering programs. And I thought their track was a lot different, less, hours involved, a lot less money than I spent on graduate school. And I thought, this is a new age mental health service, and people are going to take our jobs away. And we were taught in undergraduate school that social workers, because this is pre-therapist title, would always have a job. And unfortunately, that wasn't true, because around the mid 2000s, a lot of mental health clinics closed, at least in my state in New York. A lot of businesses were duplicative. Community offices were closing down their mental health departments and merging with behavioral health under hospitals. There were a lot of drastic changes in the mental health system in the past 10 to 15 years, and mental health was still not a very well-respected industry. And when all of these different things were happening in marginalized communities where outpatient clinics and community-based organizations were folding, it left me feeling a little vulnerable, to be honest. And I was jealous. I was like, well, who are these coaches? What does this person do? And in the beginning, no one necessarily had to have a certification. I went and got a certification for it. And over time, I started taking courses in specialties I wasn't familiar with, like social media at the time. I wasn't thinking about owning a business. I wasn't thinking about marketing. And thankfully, I started investing in myself. And my image changed, my attitude, my outlook changed. And I wanted to make myself a little bit more marketable. And I figured I might as well get myself certified. And a lot of the work in the program was very similar to what I was familiar with in mental health, social work. So actually getting certified, I think, kind of positioned me, to be honest, to have that more deeper impact, because people, saw me as a therapist first. And then once I was certified as a coach, it gave me a little bit more credibility. And through branding myself as a coach, through marketing my book, it really helped to solidify me to transition from just being a therapist into being a coach. So now not only do I get to work internationally, because we don't have the regulations in coaching we have in mental health. I get to work with corporations as a consultant coach, and it's really expanded my work. So it was really not planned. It was by chance. It was through the change in the environment, honestly, what people were putting in demand. And yeah, you can still be a coach and not be certified, and people can respect your work and book you. But I've met since then a lot of psychotherapists like myself who've also now gotten a certification, either as a health coach or nutrition coach, or a life coach or executive coach. And it just really makes us a lot more marketable.
Wow. Yeah, what a journey. And to think that people used to not even have certifications and they were being put in front. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you've accomplished something in your life and then you decide to be a coach, I get it, because you can prove that you accomplish things. But if you just start off, I'm a life coach, and then you go out and get in people's heads and help them make decisions, that's, for me personally, that's the only reason I never did it, because I'm still working on things I'm accomplishing. And, I set the bar for what I believe will then allow me to claim, so I'm really, really excited to hear that you decided to go that route and then turn into that. At what point does authoring books fall? Because I know when you're in school, you have to publish papers to sort of get where you're going. Did that lend itself to helping you write your book? And then at what point did the book really come in?
That's a good question. I was glad in my program, I honestly didn't have to publish. I think it was because of the track. I know in psychology, you have to present your paper to a panel, like a thesis. We didn't have that in social work. And I went to a pretty prestigious school, Fordham University in Manhattan, in New York.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, we didn't have to do that. We did have a lot more clinical hours then than people are required to have now. But for me, the idea of writing a book wasn't something in this way I had planned for until maybe a couple of years ago. And I really wanted to do something that was a little bit more guided in self-care. But then as I work with more millennials, which tends to be the population I draw, I wanted to have a guide, literally a small book that was pocket size, basically people could carry in their backpack, that would help get millennials, who I find are very entrepreneurial in spirit and in action, but deal with a lot of imposter syndrome, questioning their value in the workplace, very insecure in their relationships, and not, honestly, in my position, being able to partner with mentors. And so you have all these great, smart, empathetic people out in the world who really feel a sense of loss, values, and struggle with consistency and feeling oftentimes undervalued in the workplace. And this guide was a way for me to be able to serve more people before I decided to do more corporate consulting and coaching. And so I'm really happy that we've been doing our best to get the message out through social media, through Amazon, which is where my book is hosted, my website, and then my blog as well, to help coach people through weekly chores and tasks of trying to live a very vibrant, prosperous life. So no, the book was really another product, as you mentioned, that would really get people informed about how to live a life that's abundant, but based in integrity. And that's why I wanted to create the book. So there'll be probably more products like that to come. This was just my first step, and I'm glad that it's over.
Yeah. I think this is a perfect opportunity to dive into the idea of intergenerational trauma and focusing on marginalized communities, which is your specialty, specifically because there's a lot of people who are listening, who own businesses and are hiring millennials and are hiring, people who are suffering intergenerational traumas and are coming from marginalized communities. And maybe business owners need to understand something about working with millennials, intergenerational trauma, and marginalized communities. I'm not saying that it's their responsibility to sit there and parent people or whatever, but this is the reality of the workforce that people are dealing with. So maybe we can lean on you just a little bit, and maybe you can shed some light on what kind of perspective we need to bring in, because I know I've been self-employed now for like 7 years, right? But I know that there are people who literally won't leave a job no matter how much it treats them badly, because they need the job, and then places of employment don't know how to deal with people, so they're doing things wrong, risking losing some of their best talent. So the floor is yours. How should we be looking at these different situations? You can tackle either one or all of them.
think I can make them all converge. And the best way I could put this is, you're right. It's not the responsibility of companies to fix social and ultimately global issues. Capitalism, patriarchy, white supremacy, all those issues are actually beyond just the societal things we deal with in North America. They affect every part of the world. And because people of color are all across the world, we tend to think that sometimes our issues are subjected to our own personal experiences, when really it's a collective experience, which goes back to trauma. Trauma is a collective experience. People don't traumatize themselves initially, they're traumatized by someone or something that occurred. Most times either in utero or in their environment or in multiple environments, which is complex trauma. And one of the things I think corporations have a responsibility in doing, however, is being educated on those social, political issues that occur right around us every day. It's like saying to you, you work for yourself, but you should still continue to learn things that are going to help your business outside of your daily task, right? So that you can become a better business person. It's the same thing for people in leadership. You can go to work every day and lead a group of people, but if you're not tuned into what's happening into those people's communities outside of work, you're not going to be the best leader possible, because you're missing a significant portion of what goes on inside of work and outside of work with those people who are marginalized. So when things happen and they're published on the news outlets, social media, and you don't tend to tune into social media or the news, then when someone comes to work distraught, overwhelmed, distracted, making errors in their work, and you didn't know that someone may have had, someone saw a public lynching, or someone who went home one night had a tragedy in their family, their parent or loved one got COVID and they couldn't say goodbye. If you're not tuned into those things that are happening in world news, then you can't come in and have the best EQ to lead a team of people who may be grieving while also trying to perform at work. And so, in essence, the responsibility is on the individuals in leadership to determine what kind of leader they want to be and what kind of teams they want to lead. And if you're a leader who leads with the heart, and you know that ultimately you want to help other people lead with heart too, then you have to do heart-informed work, which means you have to be people-oriented. You have to be willing to produce people outcomes, not just numbers and economic outcomes that's going to change your bottom line. So for me, part of what I do now in my work as a consultant in corporations is try to help leaders to develop that type of EQ so that they can lead from a mission that's based in productivity, yes, right? But in people, because people are going to make the productivity better. They're going to be more loyal to the job. They're going to feel more inspired to work and transform things because they have a personal investment in it. And if we see that from a top-down perspective, then ultimately you impact the people who work for you, the people who they refer to the work, and that then brings revenue up anyway. So for me, all of that is a societal issue, and it does change the way generations function, because if you coming into the workplace do not feel supported, you can't trust your boss, microaggressions are occurring, that's a societal and generational issue, because probably your ancestors couldn't trust their bosses, didn't feel at ease at work, may have expressed or experienced microaggressions before that was a term. And if they modeled certain behaviors like put your head down and work, don't question leadership, never take a day off, and they modeled or taught you that, then you go into the workplace doing those same things. And in essence, create generations of people who've been taught not to speak up, not to stand up for their values, not to take sometimes a day off, not to advocate for themselves financially to get increases or bonuses, not to advocate for mentorship or sponsorship. And that's what we need to change. And that ultimately is a corporate issue. And that starts from the top, not from the middle or below.
Love that. And just think of the numbers the financial loss that a company experiences from not providing a platform where people can feel comfortable questioning something and saying, hey, this isn't working, then think of how many people they'll lose along the way because that was never addressed and never fixed. Talk about taking care of your bottom line, right? I'm so grateful you said the way you said it. And this is one of those things where like I have to chop it out and just get it prepared to share because there are so many people dealing with this right now. And you're literally the perfect trifecta of skills and experience in the way that you work with people and corporations to be able to deliver this message. And it's just an opportunity I couldn't pass up. Now, that being said, I want to roll out the red carpet for you and sort of allow people to know where you prefer for them to connect with you, Asha. Like, where do you want them to follow you? Is it a social channel, your website, newsletter? What's the word and what do you have planned for the future that you want them to know about?
Thank you for that. The best way people should reach out to me is on Instagram. I do my best to try to inform people every day a little bit about what generational trauma looks like, what social traumas can be, relational traumas can look like, and give them some education as well as tools. They can go from there to my website, subscribe to my blog where I give them some coaching inventories to take. And so we have a whole series now going on for people to self-inventory their finances, their social emotional relationships, their values, which I'm really excited about. So they can book me through there. They can find out a little bit more about my work. They can hear my voice. They can get a little bit more of a feel for what I do by following me at Asha Tari Mental on Instagram. And from there, it'll lead them everywhere else. So that's pretty much how people should connect with me. And the move right now, honestly, is to work with more corporations because we spend a majority of our life working, which means we spend a majority of our lives disconnected from ourselves because we're distracted most of the day. So if I can see more people committed to top-down approaches to really healing people who have been marginalized and continue to be, then that work is where I'm headed because we've done a lot of really great things during this pandemic. But unfortunately, I would say the one thing that I wish would not have been was these workshops. We did a lot of workshops during the pandemic, and what gives me a little sense of kind of rub is workshops are great when you get to see people in person because you can interact, you can pass things around, people can touch, you can write on a whiteboard, which you could do online, of course, but there's a different flow in the room and people are a little bit more engaged. But when you're Zooming all day and then you have someone come in and do a 1-hour workshop, it's a little hard to get people to focus and to retain that kind of information. So now what we're doing is creating a program, a curriculum where people can Zoom in for half the time. They can get other downloadable tools to strengthen their learning. It's self-focused, but it's community-based. And this way it allows corporations to build upon a foundation of trust and people. And so that's really what we want to do is get more corporations to buy into the mission of being people healing, being in the business of healing communities through working together and bringing wellness into the corporate spaces.
And it's just truly a pleasure to be speaking with you. It's one of those things where to take the experiences that you've had and bring them to where you are today and to be able to deliver them to business at a time when we need it the most. I mean, telehealth is a real thing. And when you combine that with your experience and bring that into a business to help level up their teams, it just makes sense. So again, you said Asha Tari Mental is the Instagram that people can connect with you.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you can go on Amazon or just Google it. A millennial adulting is a millennial guide to everything your parents didn't teach you. That's another book you can take a look at. And other than that, I've come to the part of the show where I've asked everybody the same question. I hope you indulge me, but you are welcome to pass. If we could have invited anybody today to join us, dead or alive, Asha, in your opinion, who would it have been and why?
This is going to be probably something I didn't think of until just now. And the person is actually alive. It's my 25-year-old niece. And the reason why I say I would have invited her to the conversation is that I really believe in legacy and passing down the things that were passed down to me, which are wealth building, which are community and mental well-being. And she's definitely someone who believes in mental health and mental well-being. But the thing I want to leave her with also is legacy and wealth building. So I would have wanted her to be here so she could understand the power and agency, as well as community, and also just the trailblazing work that I think people in my industry are doing right now to show people that we're a respectable industry as mental health providers. We deserve everything we ask for, including an increase in our rates and our fees, and that we're a valuable industry, and people really need to get more familiar with the ways in which we work, because we all work very differently. We all specialize in something. And I think we were probably just as valuable, I would say we were, during this pandemic as the doctors and nurses were. And so I want people to just remember that when they think about helpers and healers, to keep us in mind. So I would have invited her here.
Yeah, no, that would have been amazing. And to reiterate the points that any entrepreneur listening, whether small business, medium, large, and they have a team, just think of how you're protecting your bottom line by tapping in, whether it's allowing for your team to spend some time with someone like Asha, or you yourself spending the time to develop the skills necessary to really change the way you're looking at the operations day to day in a world of today. Asha, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Action and Ambition with your host, Andrew Metal. Please leave a review and subscribe, and go to andrewmetal.com for all the exclusive lessons, behind the scenes footage, and video content of the show. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube at Action and Ambition, and we'll see you on the next episode.